So this video is all about creating inserts in Pro Tools. I've noticed doing non-screenshot videos sometimes becomes confusing because 90% of the it's not working is because of the software. And in Pro Tools, and then you can match this. This is why Pro Tools is a industry standard for bigger studios because we use a lot of hardware. On a Mac, you can hit Command plus, and it'll actually bring up the mixing window. If you're just using one monitor, so that's something cool to remember. What you're going to do here is, if you look at my session, I'm going to point this out. I'm using hardware. The SSL pair stands for the two SSL alphas. The massive MU is actually a patch bay that I have to make, so I have to patch the massive into the MU, and then we're going to use just one set of converter channels. What that means is if you have an audio interface, all I'm talking about is your output. So look at the back of your interface, and how many outputs do you have? How many inputs do you have? When we're using a lot of hardware, we're going to need a lot of multiple inputs and outputs to run different signals. So most of the time, if you have an interface with 8 input, 8 output, this is pretty much standard for starting this. But some interfaces work different. Some just have an insert point. Some have, 6 in, 6 out. The new Apollo interface actually smarted this out and realized that we're going to add 2 more outputs and then just have, corresponding input and outputs. So you're not taking up channels, which you actually do because we always have to have an output to your speakers or whatever. So outputs 1 and 2 are my main outputs in this session, and pretty much most of you guys do it that way. These outputs are being routed to a track that we consider a bus, and that's an auxiliary track that is taking these outputs, anything that's assigned to it. So if I wanted to go and say, I'm going to assign this to the SSL pair, that's assigned, and it's going to be coming over to this bus. Now I'm going to show you how to do that, and then we're going to show you how to set this. So I want to set this back because we're getting ready to mix this song. So when you want to create something, we'll go all the way to the beginning of this. Let's pretend like this, we want to create a bus for all of these. I can hold down the shift key and I can highlight all of them. The way to do that is actually pretty simple once you do it a few times. This is how you do it. You highlight the first one, hold the shift, and do that. Now, when you go to create a bus, you can hold down shift option. You can go to new track in Pro Tools 9. If you're not in Pro Tools 9, you can pretty much, you're going to just have to create a new track by going up to the top here and hitting track and then hitting auxiliary. So what we want to do is hold down shift option, go to new track, and we're going to send this out to a piece of hardware. So I'm going to go to, let's say I got some liquid channels. We're going to call this the liquid bus. So I hit create here. Now we have the liquid bus. Now what we need to do in order to make this work with our hardware is we have to have our equipment, whether it's a compressor, an EQ, a reverb, whatever it is, we're going to have to assign it to a channel manually. So Pro Tools sees this as an I/O, an in and out. And a lot of people that this is not working for you is because of this. You go to setup, you go to I/O, and this insert here is not set up correctly. Most of the time, if you get a new interface, you're going to want to click default, or if you have somebody else's Pro Tools session, it saves their I/O settings. You're going to have to default it back to the original. So you hit OK here once you're defaulted. The other cool thing is you can hit, like, let's say 9 and 10 is your insert, and that's where you hooked up your piece of equipment. Here's the thing that you got to understand. Insert 9 and 10 is correlating to an input-output. Do you see how that works? Right now, the 9652 would be my interface, but I'm not hooked up to my studio. I do basic editing just down on the laptop in front of my TV. So what we're going to do, let's say this says, oh, we got a compressor here. So we can name that a compressor, but I really don't want to do that right now. So we'll leave that be. So now you just got to make sure that you go to Setup I/O, and make sure that you go to insert and all your insert channels are showing up corresponding to how many inputs and outputs are on your interface. That's it. Now you hook up your hardware, let's say outputs 5 and 6. So out of 5 and 6 on your interface would go to the inputs of the liquid channels. Out of the liquid channels would return back into the inputs of your interface. You go down to I/O. You're going to go to, let's say 5 and 6 is the, where you just hooked up your pieces of equipment. You hit 5 and 6. It would be active if I was in my studio, but it's not. Now what's going to happen is the signal's not going to just go out 1 and 2. It's going to go here to here. It's going to go out to 5 and 6, or your compressor, let's say. It's going to return in to your interface down this channel, and it's going to go out 1 and 2 so you can hear it through the speakers. That is creating a hardware insert in Pro Tools. I think a lot of people make this more confusing. It was pretty confusing to me at first, but that is created by creating an auxiliary track. And the reason I did an auxiliary track is because the liquid bus, I needed to route all these to 2 killer pieces of equipment. Now you don't have to do it this way. You could do this. Let's say let's just pretend like this never existed. Let's get rid of this liquid bus deal. So let's delete this track. So that never existed. Let's go to this, hold down the shift, hit shift option, and let's return this back to 1 and 2. So now we have it back to 1 and 2. Let's just say this lead vocal, we just want to run that through the liquid channel. You can easily do this by going to I/O 5 and 6, but now we have that as just affecting this one track. Now let's say you insert this, and the gentleman that actually asked the question on YouTube, he said, well, I inserted it, now I have latency issues. One of the biggest latency issues is caused by very high buffer sizes. 1024 is a lot of samples. When you're doing minimize additional I/O latency, you can click that, and then you can also set your buffer size to maybe 128 or 256. If you're trying to get the highest end mix, 1024 is actually better for a better image when we're mixing, and you need a really monstrous computer to not have hardware inserts. Pro Tools HD actually takes care of these issues by using its processor cards. So what you're going to do here is to compensate for this. I'm going to show you this. This is really cool. You can go to your I/O again, and you're going to see over here it says hardware insert delay. You can actually test your insert delay, or just get the number of your insert delay and how much milliseconds are actually being caused by that piece of equipment by doing this. So let's say we just want to test this out. We want to see what in the world, when it hits that piece of equipment, how much delay is caused. So you can go here, you can create a new track. You're not going to create an aux, you're going to create an audio track because you want to record this. Let's call it the test delay. Hit create. Now what you're going to do, which is pretty cool, is you're going to just put the insert I/O 5 and 6 over on your audio track. You're going to arm this to pretty much record the track over here. That's all you're doing. Now when you do this, what it's going to do, since I don't have inserts, is once you record it, you're going to go back to your editing window, and you're going to notice that there's a delay here. Now if you zoom in, you can zoom in this way. So you can zoom in and actually calculate how many minutes and seconds that bar, because all of them are showing right now. So if you get in very close, you can actually highlight this region, and you can see the length of what your delay was. And that's a cool little trick to learn how to delay, because honestly, when you see this, you're going to notice it's grabbing all these because I have a group. I'll get into that later. but this top one will be different than the recorded track underneath. So this one that's actually being recorded, that's blank here, will be a humongous or a small, in milliseconds, delay in time. So then you can go up to your IO, you can go into HW insert delay, and you're just going to type it in here. I don't have my interface hooked up, okay, so that's why none of this stuff's showing up. But if it was, you would see little boxes for each individual insert you've created, and you can go from there and you can actually type in the milliseconds. Or you can just sit there and guess, which I've done sometimes because I didn't feel like doing the test. And that is how you create an insert. It's nothing more than creating a in-out path from a piece of equipment hardwired to your interface. Patch bay is another thing. So that's the basics of it. Now, people get confused with buses. This is actually a bus. Well, it's really not a bus because it's an audio track, but the previous one was a bus. So let's show you what a bus is, and then I'm going to get out of here. A bus is this. When you take a bunch of tracks, or just one or two, shift option on the Mac, I think it's shift alt on, it's the same thing. And you're just going to take this, you're going to create a new track, you're going to create an aux track, and you're just going to call it whatever. Test. Now everything's being sent out, bus, test, to the input of the test auxiliary. That's a bus. To send this bus to a reverb, you're going to create a new track, aux, we'll call this the verb. Now this lets you actually, you see the verb track? This is a send. Most of the time you use a send for reverbs and stuff like that. So you go to your plugins or whatever you want to put on there, and you can put a plugin on there. Now when you send, you can take this and you can put this verb on whatever tracks you want. And whatever tracks we want to affect, each one will have its individual faders, so we can affect it and we can automate it and we can do all kinds of cool stuff. So pretty much a send is used for reverbs, delay boxes, maybe parallel compression if you want to do that. The reason a send is different than a hard bus to a track is because a send is actually still allowing the signal to go out 1 and 2 on its original track. But then, see, so everything's still coming to this bus, but then this bus is being sent out to different reverbs, if that makes any sense. And that reverb is on its own little aux track that we can set it and forget it, and then we can set our different verbs. So that is a tutorial on how to create sends, aux, buses, and also how to set up your hardware inside Pro Tools. So this is Doug Jenkins from imixandmaster.com. Hopefully you liked the video, and we're going to keep them coming.